In July 2023, a small private aircraft went down over the dense boreal forest of northern Alaska. Only one person was ever found, days later. This is what they told us. The sun hasn't moved since the crash, not even an inch. It just hangs there, pale, tired, almost embarrassed, like it doesn't want to witness what's happening below. My watch stopped at 3:14 p.m. That was 2 days ago, or maybe 2 hours. I honestly don't know anymore. But last night, just before I closed my eyes, I swear I heard it tick. Just once. One tick. Then silence again. Just like everything else in this place. There's no sound here. No birds. No wind. No buzzing in my ears. Just a kind of thick, velvety stillness that wraps itself around my thoughts and squeezes. I used to think silence was peaceful. Now I know better. Silence is patient. Silence is what watches you while you unravel. It was supposed to be a routine trip, a Tuesday flight, Vancouver to Kamloops, 42 minutes in the air. A dull meeting I was planning to half listen through while nodding and pretending to care about numbers I didn't believe in anymore. I never even wanted to take this job. It was supposed to be a stepping stone, a placeholder before something real came along. I'd been telling myself that for 5 years. I missed my flight. Not dramatically, not in some cinematic sprint through the terminal kind of way. Just late. I took the wrong train from downtown, spent too long arguing with a barista about my order, and by the time I reached the gate, the plane was already airborne. I remember staring at the departure screen, standing still while people rushed around me. A kind of quiet settled in my chest, the kind that comes when you know something has shifted, even if you don't know what yet. That's when I met Marcus. He was standing near a vending machine, tapping the side of it like he was trying to wake it up. And flight jacket, mirrored sunglasses, calm eyes. He asked if I was all right. I must have looked pretty wrecked. Said he was flying a short-range charter out over the mountain range and had room for one more. Just gas money and a name, he said with a half smile. I said yes without thinking. We walked across a tarmac that shimmered with heat. The plane looked older than both of us. Single-prop beauty with scratches along her sides like stories she hadn't told yet. Inside it smelled like leather and dust, the kind of scent that makes you feel nostalgic for something you've never lived through. Marcus did the usual checks, muttering to himself. I buckled in, trying not to think about the fact that I had no idea where we'd land, just that I needed to be somewhere else, anywhere else, fast. We took off smooth. The city disappeared beneath us in minutes.
Mountains rolled out ahead like an ancient, sleeping thing. The clouds were thin. The sun was sharp and golden, pouring in through the side window. I remember actually smiling. For a moment, it felt like escape. Then, the air changed. It started with a tremble, small at first, like turbulence. I glanced at Marcus, but he didn't flinch. Said we were just cutting through mountain breath, whatever that meant. But then the tremble became a jolt. The engine coughed, then coughed again. Then, silence. Not the quiet hum of gliding, dead silence. I turned to Marcus. He was pressing buttons, flipping switches in tight succession. His comm cracked, just a little. No radio. Too fast for that. He looked at me, really looked at me, and said just one word. Brace. There's no sensation like falling from the sky. It's not what movies show. There's no screaming wind, no camera shaking. It's slower, thicker, like the air around you gets tired of holding you up and just lets go. I remember the trees rising like spears, and the sick feeling of gravity reversing, like the planet itself had turned upside down to catch us in its teeth. Then a crack, a blinding white, and nothing. Pain was the first thing I felt. It came before the smell of smoke, before the stifling heat, before the realization that I was still alive. It radiated from my shoulder in thick, stabbing pulses, as if something inside had come loose and was trying to claw its way out. I opened my eyes to a sideways world. The cabin was twisted metal and broken glass. Bits of insulation floated like ash in the heavy air. The ceiling, or maybe the wall, was crushed inward. A small flame licked at a torn seat cushion a few feet away. Everything smelled like oil and ozone and burnt rubber. I was still strapped in. My seat was tilted sideways, halfway embedded in what used to be the wall. The buckle was jammed. I tugged at it with my good arm, biting down hard as pain bloomed across my ribs. Finally, it gave. I fell out of the harness and landed hard, my left side screaming as it made contact with cold metal. I lay there for a moment, dazed, eyes half open, trying to breathe without shattering. Marcus. I turned toward the front, but the cockpit was gone, just gone, ripped open like a can, wires dangling in the air, shards of glass glittering in the filtered light. No body, no movement, just the hollow echo of what had once been controlled descent. I crawled out on all fours. The light outside was strange, gray and unfocused, like morning light filtered through smoke.
Trees surrounded the crash site in every direction, tall and uniform, their bark a sickly shade of grayish blue. No branches low to the ground, no underbrush, just trunks, endless, silent trunks. And silence. That was the second thing I noticed. The kind of silence that presses against your ears like water. No birds, no wind, not even the hum of distant insects. Just the faint crackling of something still burning behind me, and the thump of my own heart. I stood slowly, one hand pressed against my side. Breathing was shallow. I tasted copper. There was blood on my shirt. I turned back toward the wreckage. Smoke curled up from the tail section. Most of the fuselage was intact, but scattered with debris, metal scraps, a seat half buried in mud, a shredded wing. No sign of Marcus. No footprints. No drag marks. I called his name once. Nothing. I tried again, louder. The sound seemed to vanish the moment it left my lips, like the trees swallowed it whole. Instinct kicked in. Assess. Prioritize. My phone was in my jacket pocket, cracked, dead. No signal. Not even an emergency ping. I tried powering it on. Black screen. Useless. The emergency pack was still under the seat. I pulled it out, hands trembling, and found a sealed water pouch, a granola bar, a space blanket, and a flare gun. No flares. Just the empty launcher. Great. Then I checked my watch. 3:14 p.m. Exactly the moment I remembered the engine going quiet. The second hand had stopped. No ticking, just a frozen moment. I tapped it. Nothing. I held it to my ear. Silence. That's when I noticed it. The shadows. They weren't shifting at all. I looked up. The sun, or what passed for it, was still in the same place it had been when I crawled out. Pale, diffused, barely visible, but unmoving, not even slightly. I looked back at my footprints and the dirt. 3 steps. Then I looked ahead. 3 more steps. Same pattern. But I hadn't moved yet. The forest didn't feel still. It felt paused, like everything was holding its breath, waiting. I turned in a slow circle, forcing calm into my breath, cataloging my surroundings. The
The trees stretched in all directions, identical. The light had no source. The air was neither warm nor cold, just thick, saturated, like walking through a dream that knew it was being watched. Then I heard it. Not loud, not distinct, but real. A branch, cracking, off to my right. Then another, closer. I froze. My instinct screamed animal, but my body knew better. There was no wildlife here. The silence wasn't the absence of life. It was the suppression of it. Something was moving, watching.
Then suddenly, nothing. No footsteps, no sound, no explanation. I took a step backward, and the moss beneath my feet made a strange sound, a squelch, like stepping on wet fabric. I looked down. The moss was moving, just slightly, like something was breathing beneath it. I stumbled back, heart pounding, nearly tripping over a root. I didn't scream. I didn't run. I didn't even breathe for a few seconds. Then I turned and walked, not because I had a destination, but because staying still felt like asking for something I didn't want to receive. There was no path, no slope, no terrain change, just miles of identical trees, each spaced almost perfectly apart, like they'd been planted by some ancient, obsessive hand. And yet something in me knew staying near the crash site was not an option. I needed water. It was the first rule that surfaced from memory, half remembered from survival videos I'd half watched during insomnia-fueled nights. Water, then shelter, then orientation, then hope. In that order. I moved slowly, favoring my right side. Every breath tugged at something inside my chest. My vision blurred at the edges, like I was watching the world through old glass. Still no animals, not a single sound, not even the buzz of insects. I followed a shallow groove in the ground, hoping it might be a dry creek bed. The moss thickened along it, the air grew cooler, and eventually I heard it, the softest trickle, as if someone were pouring water from a great distance. I pushed through a curtain of vines and found it, a stream, narrow and crystal clear, flowing over smooth stones. The water moved oddly, with a kind of precision. No swirling eddies, no debris, just a slow, perfect glide, like it was being pulled by something unseen. I knelt. My reflection looked wrong, not distorted, but off. The light on my face didn't match the sky. My eyes seemed darker, deeper. I drank anyway. It tasted like nothing. Not fresh, not dirty, just blank. I pulled a bottle from the emergency pack, stood up, and turned toward a cluster of low-growing trees. Their branches curved toward each other like fingers intertwined. Between them, I spotted a small rise, closest thing I'd seen to high ground. It wasn't much, but it was something. I gathered fallen limbs, dried moss, even strips of fabric torn from the edge of the pack. My fingers trembled from cold and fatigue, but I kept working. Shelter meant survival. Shelter meant control. By the time I finished the crude lean-to, the light overhead was unchanged, still that pale, washed-out glow, with no warmth, no direction. I checked my watch again. Still 3:14. I tried to convince myself it was just broken, that time outside this place continued on as usual, but my body said otherwise. It ached like it had been through a day's worth of work, not minutes. I wrapped a space blanket around myself and sat under the shelter, finally still. That's when I noticed the trail, not one I had made. About 10 meters away, near the base of a curved tree, the moss was disturbed, pressed flat in the shape of a shoe print. Not boot, not hiking gear, a dress shoe, narrow, polished. And next to it, another, smaller, child-sized. The prints were too perfect, not smeared, not aged, just present. I rose slowly, heartbeat thick in my ears. There was no one in sight, no sounds, but the air around me felt retracted, like the forest had just taken a breath in. I turned back toward my shelter. One of the sticks I had wedged into the roof had been moved. It wasn't broken, just shifted. I scanned the area again, my stomach twisted. Was I being watched? Or had something already been here watching me build? I sat back down, but sleep was no longer possible. Not after that. Instead, I stared into the trees, into the stillness, waiting for movement, hoping there wouldn't be any. And somewhere deep inside me, a truth began to surface. This place didn't want me to survive. It wanted me to stay. I don't know how long I sat under that shelter. Time doesn't pass here. It waits. I tried sleeping, but every time I closed my eyes, something tugged at the edge of my awareness. Not a sound, not a movement, just a sensation, like being observed through layers of fog. Eventually, I gave up. I decided to move again, not because I had a destination, but because stillness in this place felt like agreement, and I wasn't ready to agree with whatever this forest wanted from me. I followed the edge of the stream, hoping it might lead to a break in the trees. As I walked, I began to notice things, small things at first. The same tree, the one with the split trunk and the black moss, appeared 3 times. I marked it with a scratch from my knife. 10 minutes later, I saw it again. Same angle, same branch pattern. But there was no loop. I hadn't turned. My path had been straight. I was sure of it. Then came the whispers. Faint. Not words. Not even sound, really. Just a texture in the air, like fabric rustling, but inside my thoughts. I spun around. Nothing. They stopped the moment I focused. They came back when I looked away. The trees began to feel closer together, the sky dimmer, the light grew thinner. But the shadows didn't grow, they just blurred. Then came the memory. Except it wasn't mine. I was walking, one hand brushing against the tree trunks, and suddenly I saw her, just a flash. A woman, sitting at the base of a tree, her hands bloody, holding something tight against her chest. A photo, the same one I had found in the wreckage. She was whispering. Her lips moved, but no sound came. Her face was sunken, tired, but her eyes were locked onto mine, like she knew I was there, like she had been waiting for someone to witness her fall. And then she was gone, vanished, as if she had been nothing more than a glitch in reality. I stumbled back, breath shallow, pulse hammering in my ears. I closed my eyes and tried to shake the image, but it clung to me like wet clothes. That's when I began to hear something new. Laughter. A child's laugh. Faint. Echoing between the trees like it was bouncing off invisible walls. Not joyful, not playful, just hollow. I froze. turned slowly. Nothing there, but my hands were shaking. My legs wanted to run. I didn't. Instead, I whispered into the silence, "Who's there?" The answer came not in sound, but in sensation, a shift in pressure. The forest around me exhaled. The trees bent, subtly, just enough to notice, just enough to make it undeniable. This place was listening. Worse, it was responding. My vision flickered. Not a hallucination, more like interference, like a VHS tape struggling to keep the image steady. I dropped to my knees, head between my hands. "It doesn't let you go." I didn't say it. I heard it. A voice layered on top of my own thoughts, calm and cold. I gasped. My hands were ice. My breath fogged in the air for the first time since the crash. The temperature dropped without warning. The trees stopped moving. The silence returned, but it wasn't empty anymore. It was full of memory, of grief, of fragments from people who had come before me. And that's when I saw them. Not clearly, not directly, but in the periphery. Figures, shapes. Not approaching, not retreating, just watching, always at the edge of my vision. I turned quickly. Nothing. But I could feel their gaze, not hostile, not welcoming, just waiting. Waiting for what? For me to forget? For me to give in? For me to become part of whatever this place truly was? I stood and ran. No direction, no logic, just away from the feeling of recognition. Because the truth was beginning to bloom in my mind, quiet and terrible. I had not just crashed into this place. Some part of me had been coming here my whole life.
There's a moment, right before sleep, when your body goes slack, but your mind jolts awake, where time folds in on itself. You hear things, see fragments, half memories, shapes at the edge of reason. I've been living in that moment for what feels like days. I stopped marking time after the fourth hallucination, or vision, or whatever they were. The truth is, this place doesn't hallucinate you, it remembers you. Echoes you back to yourself in pieces you didn't know existed. That morning, if it was morning, I found a clearing I hadn't seen before. Perfectly circular. The trees around it grew in a ring, their trunks twisted inward as if bowing. In the center, a single flat stone, smooth, almost carved. I approached slowly. As I stepped into the circle, something changed. The air grew thicker, like it had weight. My ears popped. My heartbeat slowed. I blinked, and the trees outside the circle seemed to flicker, like frames skipping on an old film reel. Then I saw the shimmer. Not light, not heat, not visible in the normal sense, more like a distortion in the fabric of air, rippling gently from the surface of the stone. It hovered there, silent and patient. I reached out, and the moment my fingers brushed its edge, everything dropped away. No forest, no stone, just darkness. But not empty. I was suspended, like floating underwater, but with no water, no gravity, no orientation. All direction dissolved. My thoughts echoed outward, like sonar, and came back different. And then I felt it. Not a voice, not even language. A presence. Something aware, something vast, not distant, but woven through everything around me. It didn't speak. It pressed against my thoughts, like a hand inside a glove, turning my mind inside out.
It showed me flashes, memories that weren't mine. A hiker from the 80s building a fire under a tree I'd passed. A child drawing circles in the moss with a broken compass. A man screaming into the sky, carving words into his own arm. All of them here. All of them taken in. And then I saw myself, not as I am, but as I was becoming. Eyes hollow, skin pale, mouth moving without sound, standing among the trees like a statue, unmoving, unthinking, just present. I tried to scream. I couldn't. I tried to move. I had no body. Then I felt the presence shift, like it had finished showing me what it wanted, like it expected me to understand. And as it receded, I heard a phrase, not with ears, but inside my memory, like a dream I had before being born. It doesn't keep you here. It rewrites you. I woke up on the stone, not collapsed,
Not disoriented, just rewritten. The air around me was still, the shimmer gone. The trees stood as they had before, but they weren't just trees anymore. They were witnesses. And I wasn't sure I was entirely human anymore. Something in me had cracked open, not broken, rearranged. I stood slowly, noticing my fingers twitch with delayed echoes. My thoughts were no longer private. Some part of me was still tethered to that presence. It hadn't taken me. It had opened me. And I knew, with certainty, not speculation, that if I stayed too long, the changes would complete themselves. I looked at the forest, and it looked back. Not metaphorically, literally. A dozen faint shapes moved behind the trees, not close, not far, not human, not threatening, just waiting, watching. Their stillness wasn't emptiness. It was an invitation. I don't remember how long I was walking. I had given up on direction, on logic, on everything except momentum. My legs were swollen. My side ached with every breath. I kept one hand pressed to the flare in my pocket, like it was the last thread tying me to the world I came from. Then I heard it. Not a voice, not a whisper. A hum, low, mechanical, like a distant engine. At first, I thought I was hallucinating again, another echo from a tired brain. But this one was different. It wasn't inside me. It bounced. It moved. It got closer. I scrambled through the trees, nearly falling 3 times. I didn't care. Blood ran down my arm. My ankle twisted. Still, I moved. And then, through the blur of trunks and shadows, I saw it. A blinking red light, pulsing steadily, mounted to the side of a rescue drone. I collapsed before I reached it, cried without sound. The tears came on their own, not from joy, not from pain, just release. The drone hovered above me, spinning slowly, scanning. I didn't even lift the flare. I didn't need to. It had already seen me. I laid back against the roots of a massive tree and closed my eyes. The forest was still, silent, watching, but it wasn't in control anymore. This time, I was being pulled out. The helicopter came the next morning. They said they found me just 5 kilometers from the crash site. I had been missing for 4 days. They asked me what I remembered. I told them the engine failed, that I lost the pilot, that I stayed near the wreckage, that I waited, that I did everything I could. Most of it was true. They didn't ask about the silence, about the shadows, about the trees that seemed to lean in when I wasn't looking, and I didn't offer it, because some things don't need to be explained to be survived.